So, good morning, everyone. Before we proceed to our discussion today, may I ask everyone, how are you doing today?
We are doing great po, ma'am.
Doing great po, ma'am.
Okay, thank you for responding. I hope everyone is doing good. Um, so, uh, Now that everyone seems to be okay, let us proceed to our discussion. So, our topic for today is relative pronouns and relative clauses. So, before we proceed, may I just remind everyone to please uh, unmute your microphone if you want to answer, or press the raise hand button if you want to answer, and turn off your or keep your microphone unmute if muted if you are just listening. That okay?
Yes po.
Yes po, ma'am.
All right. So let us go first with relative pronoun. What is a relative pronoun? So when we say relative, the word relative means it is connected or it is linked with something. So what do we mean by relative pronouns? So, relative pronouns are a type of pronoun that is used to link different parts of a sentence. Relative pronouns also are used to join or relate two different clauses together by referring to the noun in the previous clause. So, relative pronouns are the pronouns used when we are going to connect two different clauses. So, these are the words that we commonly use to connect uh, two different classes or two independent clauses. So, what are the relative pronouns? So, here are the example or here are the relative pronouns. So, we have here who, whom, whose, which, that, where, when, and why. So, let us learn when do we use relative pronouns. Relative pronouns has rules, and we don't just use relative pronouns if we wanted to. We have to follow certain rules when we are going to use the relative pronouns. So first, the relative pronoun which. Well, we use the relative pronoun which if we are referring to an object. Again, when do we use the relative pronoun which? Yes, Erica?
When we are referring to an object po, ma'am.
Very good. When we are referring to an object or a certain thing. Um, we take a look at the sentence here below. In which house do you live? So, the sentence or someone is asking which house do you live, so you are asking for the house or which of the houses do you own, or if you are asking someone which house do you live, so we use here which to refer to the house. Again, what is house? I mean, what part of um, house is a thing, right? That's why we
Yes po.
use the relative pronoun which. Okay, I hope everyone is listening and understand what I am talking about. Then we have here the relative pronoun who. We use the relative pronoun who when we are referring to a person. So in the previous one, which is the which, we use the which to refer to a thing. On the other hand, we have here the relative pronoun who, which we use to refer to a, again,
Person po.
person. Very good. Um, will you please read the sentence below, Aunt Tricia?
Who bought the brown dog.
So, all right. Who bought the brown dog? Um, why do you think we use the relative pronoun who in this sentence? Anyone? Yes, Erica.
I think that's why we use who in this sentence is because we are referring to a person and not a thing po.
Okay, very good. Some in the sentence, you are asking, or the person is asking who bought the brown dog. So she is asking for the person who buy or who bought the brown dog. Okay, next is we have the relative pronoun that. That is used to refer to a thing, place, or an idea. Who can read the sentence or who can read the sentence provided? Yes, LJ.
Did you see the dog that I bought?
Thank you. Um, anyone could anyone who can tell me why do you think we or why do we think we use that in this sentence? Anyone? Okay, let me explain this one. We use that here because we are referring to the dog. Um, if we will read again the sentence, did you see the dog that I bought? So that is used to refer to the dog or to yes to refer to the dog because someone is asking or someone is looking to the dog that he or she has bought. Okay. Note that in informal language, we can use that instead of who or which. So in informal language, instead of using who or which, we can substitute it by the word that. Again, in informal language only. We commonly use that instead of who and which. So furthermore, in some cases, we can leave out that. Um, in this sentence, okay, who can read the sentence provided here? Will you please read? Yes, Erica.
The course that he chose isn't her dream.
Okay, as you can see, the course that he chose isn't her dream. So that is the word that is included in the sentence. So here it is. W- Um, but it is stated here that in some cases we can leave out that or we can omit the word that. Let's try to omit the word that. Um, yes, Anne, can you restate the sentence without using the word that?
The course he chose isn't her dream.
Okay, thank you. Nice answer. And um, again, the course he chose isn't her dream. As you can see, removing the word or removing the relative pronoun that does not affect the sentence or the meaning of the sentence. Did you understand?
Yes po.
Yes
In
po.
some cases, we can leave out the word that, or it means that we can we can omit or we can remove the word that. Another is we can't leave out who, which, what, and relative clauses with extra information that is important. So, in the previous slide, we tackled we discussed that we can the relative pronoun that can be omitted, but here the relative pronoun who, which, and what uh, cannot be omitted or cannot be removed. especially that if the relative clauses states an extra information that is important. Again, we cannot leave or we cannot omit who, which, and what on the sentence if the clause is stating additional information. So for you to further understand, let's have the first sentence here. Will you please read? Who wants to read? Yes, Erica again.
Dorothy, who does my hair, has just had a baby. I lent him The Old Man and the Sea, which is really easy to read.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Erica. Um, as you can see, our subject here is Dorothy. And Dorothy is a person. That's why we use the relative pronoun who. And again, who, which, and what cannot be omitted if the relative clause states additional information. So here, who does my hair is an additional information. Dorothy, who does my hair, has just had a baby. Again, we cannot remove the who, which, and what if we are adding some information. The next one. Let's have the second sentence. I let him the old man and the sea, which is really easy to read. So, the old man and the sea is a book, and book is a thing. That's why we use the relative pronoun which. Again, we cannot remove which if we are adding some additional information. And the additional information here is anyone. What is the additional information in the sentence? Yes, LJ.
which is really easy to read.
All right, very good. I hope you understand that the case that we're in, we cannot remove who, which, and what in the sentence. Proceed. Let us proceed with another relative pronoun. We have here the relative pronoun whose. Will you please read the definition? Yes, Anne.
We say whose for possession of who. We only use whose after people to refer to things that are theirs. We cannot omit whose.
All right, very good. And again, whose is used if we are referring to a thing that is belong to someone. So it is used to show possession. We only use whose after people to refer to things that are theirs. We use whose. It is commonly preceded by a noun or a person. In the question here, who can will you please read the question? Yes, Erica.
Whose house is at the end of the street?
So in this sentence, as you can see, you are asking for someone who owns the house at the end of the street. That's why we use the relative pronoun whose to refer to someone who owns the house. Did you get that?
Yes po.
Yes
How
po.
about others? Thank you. Let's proceed with another relative pronoun. The next relative pronoun is whom. Who can read the definition? Will you please read the definition? Yes, LJ.
Whom is generally used in formal contexts. Whom is used for direct objects, people.
We have here a question again. Will you please read the question provided? Yes, Erica.
To whom did Mike address the letter?
Okay, it is stated here that whom is used for direct object, or to the direct object is the receiver of the action. Again, in this question, you are asking for someone who received the letter that Mike uh, composed. Again, you are we the relative pronoun whom is used in this question to ask who received the letter that Mike created. Is that clear, class?
Yes po.
Again, whom is generally used in formal context. So we don't usually use whom for some informal setup or informal context. So let us proceed with the next relative pronoun. Where? Uh, when do we use the relative pronoun where? Will you please read the definition? Uh, any other hand aside from Erica? Yes, and Trisha.
We use where when we are referring to places.
All right. Thank you, Anne. Again, we use where when we are referring to places. So in the question provided here, where did you go? So someone is asking for a place that she or he went. Again, we use the relative pronoun where if we are referring to what?
Places po.
Very
Places.
good. When we are referring to places. The next relative pronoun here is when. When do we use when? Erica.
We use when for time and day.
All right. We use when we are referring to time or day. So in the question here, when are you going? So you are asking for time. You are asking someone for the time that he or she uh will go. Again, we use the relative pronoun when we are referring to time and day. Did you understand, class? Is that clear?
Yes po, clear po.
Yes, po.
Thank you. Um, Another relative pronoun here is the relative pronoun why. We use why to explain the reason. When we are explaining or when we are about to explain something, we use the relative pronoun why. So in the question here again provided, will you please read the question provided on the slide? Yes, LJ.
Why did you choose that color?
All right, thank you. We use why here to ask for some reasons. Why did she or why did he chose that color? Again, we use the relative pronoun why if we are asking for some reasons or if we are explaining a reason. So that's it. That's that's uh That's the relative pronoun. So let us review first. Again, relative pronouns are used to join or relate two different clauses together by referring to the noun in the previous clause using the pronouns. So again, when do we use the relative pronoun who? Um, yes, and Trisha.
We use the relative pronoun who to refer to a person.
All right, very good. We use the relative pronoun who if we are referring to a person. Um, How about the relative pronoun whom? When do we use the relative pronoun whom? Yes, Erica?
We use the relative pronoun whom when we are referring to a person who acts as a direct object po.
All right, very good. So, whom is used for people or the receiver of the action. So, or in other words, this is the object or the direct object. What about which? When do we use the relative pronoun which? Yes, Anne?
We use the relative pronoun which to refer to things.
All right, very good. We are using which to refer for an object or for a thing. What about the relative pronoun whose? When do we use the relative pronoun whose? Yes, LJ.
We use the relative pronoun whose in referring for possession of a person.
All right. We use the relative pronoun whose to show possession or to show that something is belong to someone. What about the relative pronoun were? When do we use the relative pronoun were? Yes, Erica.
We use the relative pronoun where when we are referring to a place po.
All right, very good. When we refer to a place, we use the relative pronoun were. Um, what about the relative pronoun when? When do we use it? Yes, LJ.
We use the relative pronoun when we are using or when we are referring to time.
All right, very good. When we refer to time, we use the relative pronoun when. What about the relative pronoun why? When do we use the relative pronoun why? Yes, Erica.
When we are expecting a reason po.
Okay, we use the relative pronoun why when we are referring to the reason or to a reason. What about the relative pronoun for a while? Okay, going back. When do we use the relative pronoun what? Anyone? Yes, LJ. When do we use the relative pronoun what?
When we are referring to an object.
All right. We use the relative pronoun what when we are referring to a thing. And lastly, the relative pronoun that is used when anyone? Yes, Erica.
When we are referring to a person, a thing po.
All right. We use the relative pronoun that to relate to people or people, animals, and things. All right. I hope you understand our first lesson for today, which is the relative pronoun. So let's proceed with the relative clauses. Um, will you please read the definition on this in the slide? Yes, Erica.
We use relative clauses to give additional information about something without starting another sentence.
All right. So relative clauses is used to give additional information about something or about the subject mostly to without starting another sentence. So two individual clauses are combined using the relative using a relative pronoun. So relative clauses have two types. First is defining relative clause. Um, Defining relative clause tells which noun we are talking about, while the next type of relative clause is non-defining relative clause. Non-defining relative clause gives us extra information about something. Um, Usually, this non-defining relative clause is not essential for a sentence, or it is just an additional information. Let's have the first situation. The relative pronoun is the subject. So we can use who, which, or that. We use who for people again, and which for things. And we can use that to relate or to refer to people or things. So will you please read the sentence here? Yes, Erica.
The house, which or that belongs to Julie is in London.
All right. So the subject here is.
The house po.
All right, very good. The subject in this sentence is the house. That's why um, the relative pronoun used is or are, which, or that. Again, we can substitute that with which and who in informal context only. Um, the house, again, we use the relative pronoun which to refer to the house, which is the subject. Again, this is a defining relative clause. So another situation in non-defining relative clause is the relative pronoun is the object. The clause can come after the subject or the object of the sentence. Will you please read the sentence here? Yes, Anne.
She loves the chocolate which that I bought.
All right. So, what do you think is the object in the sentence? Anyone?
Chocolate,
What do you
ma'am.
think is the object? Again, Anne?
Chocolate, ma'am.
All right, very good. So, chocolate is the object in this sentence. That's why, and chocolate is a food. Yes, and it is. We can consider it as a thing. That's why we use which or that to refer to the chocolate. Is that clear?
Yes po.
While in the non-defining relative clause, when clause comes after the subject, uh, will you please read the sentence provided? Yes, LJ.
My boss, who is very nice, lives in Manchester.
All right. So, what do you think is the subject in this sentence?
My boss.
All right. My boss, and my boss is a.
A very nice person.
All right. So, what I mean is, My boss is a person. That's why we use the relative pronoun. What do you think is the relative pronoun we use in the sentence?
Who po?
Alright, we use the relative pronoun who to refer to the boss. Again, boss is a person, that's why we use the relative pronoun who. Going back to the definition of non-defining relative clause, non-defining relative clause adds additional information, which is not that important in a sentence. Um, when we remove who is very nice, the sentence is still understandable. Is that right?
Yes
When
po.
we omit the non-defining relative clause, um, will you please identify first which is the non-defining relative clause in the sentence? Yes, Eric.
The non-defining relative clause in the sentence po is who is very nice.
All right. Thank you and uh, good answer. When we omit this clause, who is very nice, what will be the sentence?
My boss lives in Manchester.
Okay, so it's still a sentence, or the sentence is still understandable, correct?
Yes po.
Um, let's proceed to the next situation in non-defining relative clause. So when clause comes after the object, will you please read the sentence here? Any other hands? Yes, LJ.
Yesterday I called our friend Julie, who lives in New York.
Um, will you please identify what is the object in this sentence? Anyone who could identify what is the object or the direct object in this sentence?
Julie po.
All right, very good, Erica. Julie is the direct object in this sentence because Julie receives the action. Will you please identify which is the non-defining relative clause in the sentence?
Who
Yes,
lives
Erica
in New
again.
York po?
All right, thank you. What will be the sentence if we remove this non-defining relative clause?
Yesterday I called our friend Julie.
So as you can see, the sentence is still clear and understandable because who lives in New York is just an additional information about Julie. Is that clear?
Yes po.
How about the others? Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Um, Again, when we say non-defining relative clause, we just add an additional information about the subject or about the object. Again, the sentence could still is still understandable without it. Unlike defining relative clause, it should have um, a relative pronoun, or it is necessary for it to have a relative clause or a relative pronoun. So that's it. I hope you understand the lesson. And before ending our class, may I ask, do you have any clarifications?
None po ma'am.
None po, ma'am.
All right, everything is clear. Um, thank you, and thank you everyone, and see you on our next uh, class.
Thank you po ma'am.
Thank
Thank
you
you
Goodbye
po,
po,
po.
ma'am.
ma'am.